If you like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, check out these Smooth Operators and Sell Crack shirts, available now at fithersjail.com. Also available in a version that does not say Sell Crack, in case you want to wear this around your family. Hey, how's it going, and welcome to another JOJOLands chapter review. Alright, another month, another chapter of the JOJOLands. And I gotta say, I think this is probably the most fun I've ever had reading, like, an ongoing manga series. The fact that I'm reading it live with people and kind of reacting to it as it happens definitely helps, but yeah, I'm enjoying the JOJOLands, like, even more than I expected to. You know, it's just such a fun, unhinged concept. It's really, really enjoyable reading it. And there's a lot to talk about this chapter, so as we begin, we see Jodio dealing crack in front of the Hawaii Supreme Court. I'm not even kidding. It was pointed out to me that this building and this statue is like, this is the real Hawaii Supreme Court. So Jodio is either extremely omega brained or he's one of the dumbest people who has ever lived. So Jodio ends up having an encounter with this not at all suspicious lady who's got her whole titties out and everything, asking to get a little bit of that, you know, a little bit of that stuff, a little bit of that cocaine. And bro, it's just so much fun seeing a story about crack. Like, you can tell Araki's, like, the kind of thing that he's into, or that he sort of got into when he was preparing to write the JOJOLands, was, like, sort of American crime, you know, drug kind of dramas, like Breaking Bad especially. When I was reading it with the chat, I think we were all pretty convinced that, like, Araki must have seen Breaking Bad, right? And I'm totally for it. You can tell Araki is having a lot of fun with this, and I think that's something that's kind of special about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, is just like how much it really reflects Araki's own interests and passions. Like, Araki absolutely loves writing JoJo's Bizarre Adventure because he can kind of just shake it up and introduce any kind of like weird element that he wants, and it doesn't feel out of place, right? Like, some authors, I think they almost get sort of railroaded into writing about a specific thing, and it's hard for them to show off some of their other interests, you know? Whereas with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, if Araki's like, man, Breaking Bad was good, I will write anime Breaking Bad now, he could totally just do that. Yeah, Jodio and this lady have the classic kind of back and forth where the lady's like, I'm not a cop, I don't look like a cop. And Jodio's like, oh, I don't know, I think you're a cop. And then she goes, oh, you know that the cops legally have to tell you that they're cops, okay? So they do that whole back and forth, and eventually Jodio's like, alright, fine. So in comes Paco, riding on a fucking scooter. I like how they have this whole kind of operation going on where Jodio's like, yeah, just leave the money in the can. Then they walk away and Paco like drops it off and they pick it up. So of course she goes, she picks it up, and uh-oh, she's a DEA agent, uh-oh. So yeah, the jig is up, Jodio gets put in the cuffs, and those two same fucking cops show up again. Like, I think most of us probably assumed those cops were just gonna be these kind of like one-off characters, but no, they show up again, and the one with the mustache is like aggressively rapey. He starts like sticking his tongue out and talking about how he's gonna like fondle Dragona's ass and rub his dick up against Jodio. Like, yeah, we'll just have to see how often these guys show up, if they're gonna be kind of like recurring characters or not. I think that'd be kind of fun, is if they're almost like this sort of Team Rocket-esque sort of group, and they kind of just show up every now and again, but they're sort of pitiful because they don't have stands. Jodio is obviously having none of it. He uses November Rain to tear apart the crack, and the cops all book it because they're getting pummeled by November Rain again. And there's actually, I think, a really kind of cute moment with Paco where, you know, he sees Jodio using November Rain and he goes, this your rain, Jodio? Nice. I'm really starting to like that guy. And you know what? I think I'm really starting to like you, Paco. Like, I think I was kind of worried that Paco would be almost like kind of a really dull sort of character. Because when he's introduced, you know, he really doesn't say a whole lot. He's kind of just like a big dude. But no, I think he's definitely starting to kind of develop into his own guy and feel like a real companion to Jodio and Dragona. And then we cut to a flashback of Jodio talking about how he got diagnosed as a psychopath, which I think is a pretty interesting kind of development for his character, because like, Araki's protagonists tend to be just a little bit sort of unhinged, you know? They don't really tend to follow a lot of the same sort of like moral conventions that a lot of other protagonists tend to follow. You know, most of them are not afraid to just straight up kill somebody. Remember that time when Josuke just like punched a hole straight through his mom to try to get to Aqua Necklace? So I think that's really interesting, having this character who's like, you know, actually sort of medically diagnosed as having a problem. So there's definitely a pretty good possibility that Jodio ends up being just like, I know this is a tough challenge when you're up against the whole rest of the Joestar lineage, but there is a very strong possibility he ends up being the most unhinged out of all of them. And then we get to see my dude Hot Dog Man, who actually has a name now. His name is Usagi Aloha Oi. Dude, I love this guy. I'm starting to like this character more and more as time goes on. Like, I think this is honestly probably the quickest I've been, like, endeared to a whole cast of, like, JoJo protagonists. So far, I really, really like all of these characters. There's not a single one where I'm like, you know what, you're just okay. No, I like all these people. And I think that's really good for me, especially because kind of looking back on JOJOLands, you know, JOJOLands had a lot of characters that I liked, but I think for me, at least, a lot of the main cast, they were kind of like, alright. You know, to be honest, I don't know if any JOJOLands character would end up making my sort of top 10 or 15 favorite JoJo characters. I think one might sort of squish his way into the top 20, but in terms of the actual cast, they definitely weren't one of my favorites, but no, I'm in it for the long haul when it comes to this crew. I really, really like their dynamic. I like the fact that they're all just sort of delinquents. They're almost kind of like a modern interpretation of sort of like how the Part 5 crew was, but instead of being mafiosos, they're just these like Zoomers. They're Zoomers that played a little bit too much of GTA Online. So the diamond heist is finally on its way. They get into a rental car, they make their way over there, and this chapter has a lot of good kind of like, just no dialogue, sort of just shots of them like driving, hanging out, kind of staking out the place. The art's awesome as always. I think probably my sort of standout drawing from the entire chapter is the one of the whole gang just in the car driving. That's such a cool piece of art, dude. So the heist begins as they make their way into the villa, and we actually get to see Usagi's stand. And I think this stand is super, super cool conceptually. Basically, the way it works is Usagi can basically go and get his stand. It's called, his stand is called the Mate Kudasai. And basically the way it works is the stand goes and touches a thing and it makes a duplicate of it. But the catch is that he needs somebody else to, like, wish for the stand to do it. So yeah, pretty interesting ability. I feel like it would be maybe a little bit too strong if Usagi could just, like, do it on his own. So I think needing somebody else to kind of make the wish definitely makes it a little more balanced. And since it seems like our kind of main group, like, their stands have been revealed, I gotta say, I think this is a really interesting group of stand abilities. Mostly because of the fact that I feel like 3/4 of these are not combat stands, right? November Rain is obviously the most, like, clearly designed for hurting people, which fits in with Jodio's character pretty well, but for the rest of these seem like they would be a lot better at kind of non-combat situations, right? So it kind of makes me wonder if the JOJOLands is going to end up being a little bit of a less combat-focused part. Obviously, characters are gonna be fighting. Like, there's no way that this long-running battle series isn't gonna have battles, but I feel like these stands are really so suited to, you know, stealing things, pulling off heists. Like, the combination of Paco being able to stick stuff onto his body, Dragona being able to kind of, like, disassemble stuff, and Usagi being able to make copies of things has so much potential for so many interesting scenarios when it comes to stealing things. So we'll just have to see what ends up happening. I'd assume in the next chapter we may see some conflict, but yeah, it's for sure gonna be interesting seeing what kind of fights these guys get into, because, like, in a stand battle, what is Paco gonna do, you know? So we get to the big reveal of the chapter, something that I don't think fucking anybody would have ever guessed. The owner of the villa is one Kishibe Rohan. Dude, when I saw this, like, you can obviously go see my reaction to it from my live stream, but I flipped out. First of all, the whole JoJo community was wrong. Like, I think basically every single one of us assumed that this would be a Higashikata, right? Because it kind of just made sense, okay? Rich Japanese person hanging out in Hawaii. And as was established in part 8, Hawaii is like a vacation destination for the Higashikatas. So now I'm kind of wondering if Araki did that on purpose, if he set it up to be like, ah, yeah, they think they're so smart, they think they're gonna see Higashikata, only to reveal that it was Rohan. And I think part of why this is so surprising is because there was zero precedent for Rohan even existing in this universe at all. Like, basically every single character in the Steel Ball Run JOJOLands universe has either, they've had something different about them, right? Like, Johnny Joestar is the sort of Jonathan equivalent, but he looks nothing like him. Same thing goes for characters like Kira Yoshikage. Same name, same stand, doesn't look anything like the original guy. But then here we have just straight up Rohan. He looks exactly the same, he's got the same name, I presume he will have the same stand. I think it's about 95% likely he has Heaven's Door, but at this point I don't trust this part anymore, you know? Like, this version of Rohan might roll up with King Crimson or something for all we know. But yeah, just what a totally out of nowhere twist. And I'm for it, because, you know, Rohan is one of my favorite characters in the whole series. I'd say he's definitely in the top 5. And it's obvious that Araki loves Rohan too, because Rohan, so any opportunity he gets to write about Rohan, he's gonna take it. The Virgin Joshu, the Chad Kishibe Rohan. So yeah, I can't wait to see next chapter. I cannot wait to see how these characters are going to interact with the Rohan. If Rohan is just going to absolutely pummel these guys or what. And yeah, this is shaping up to be really interesting. Like, a fucking diamond heist where the owner is Kishibe Rohan. This is just like the coolest thing ever. Yeah, this is another awesome chapter. Can't wait to see more. Like, you know, we're super early into this. We only have 2 chapters, and like, this could presumably go as long as maybe 10 years. Like, who knows really, but if this keeps up, I think it's in contention for being one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. I'm loving this so far. Yeah, this shit's slapping. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. See you guys next time.